Did Neuvillette just imply that Focalors is dead? Now, if that statement has left you flabbergasted, good. That's exactly the state of mind I need you to be in to understand this. I hope right now you're feeling dazzled, lied to, deceived, behooved even. But my line of reasoning is not completely unfounded, and as a matter of fact, it stems from Old Faithful. That's right, bust out the Neuvillette voice lines.
I went to see an opera recently. It was about a lady whose personal charm and manipulative schemes allowed her to continue to dominate the affairs of the grand mansion where she lived even after her death, like a ghost that refused to be exorcised. The acting was impeccable and the story exceptional. It also reminded me of the current state of affairs in the real world.
A lady whose personal charm and manipulative schemes allowed her to continue to dominate the state of affairs of the Grand Mansion even after her death. I think it's widely accepted at this point that Focalors is the voice in the Oratrice, but I think we can go even one step further and say that Focalors is dead. But before we can talk about how this is possible, given there is a voice in the Oratrice, it's important to break down this quote first. Neuvillette described the lady as having a personal charm and manipulative schemes. Interestingly enough, in Furina's official introduction, it reads, "Undoubtedly, Furina has been much loved by the people of Fontaine from the moment she became Hydro Archon. Her charismatic parlance, lively wits, and elegant bearing all bear witness to her godly charms." Neuvillette describing the lady in the opera as charming also perfectly matches Furina, as she herself is a charming individual with a flair for the dramatic. Among her people, she's a beloved Archon who's always putting on a show, constantly entertaining them. In regards to the manipulative scheme part of the quote, if this theory is correct, then he may be referencing something that happened hundreds of years ago, back when Furina was still capable of speaking like a god.
You will see much in the human world, from the delightful to the depressing. And one day, when you have dwelt among humanity long enough, you will be placed to bring judgment over all as a spokesperson for Fontaine's past.
How Furina is speaking here is a far cry from the Furina we know today.
Unforgivable!
But how did this happen? In the centuries that passed, how did Furina go from speaking with authority to speaking in a manner unbecoming of that of a god? I think the answer lies in the creation of the Oratrice. Neuvillette confirms to us that shortly after the previous Hydro Archon Egeria died, her last words, which was the prophecy Fontaine is facing today, began to circulate. In it, she stated something to the effect of,
that the sea levels will rise and everyone will be dissolved in water, leaving Furina crying alone on her throne, but the sins of the people will be finally washed away for good.
Later, he also says this about Furina.
Speaking of the prophecy, Furina has also always taken it quite seriously. Indeed, she has been collecting information and intelligence from across Tevat for this purpose. If the rumors were true, then perhaps this prophecy is the conundrum left to Furina by her predecessor.
Neuvillette confirms two things here. One is that Furina has always taken the prophecy seriously, and two is that she has known of the prophecy for 500 years at this point. What's interesting about Neuvillette saying Furina has always taken the prophecy seriously is that there's someone else who would strongly disagree with this statement. In what can only be described as a live flaying, Arlecchino questions what Furina is doing about the prophecy, and Furina responds by sort of just summoning her inner Capitol Hill and giving the most non-useful answers I think I've ever heard. I mean, just look.
Then I ask you, Miss Furina, just what have you been working on? Where can we see it, and what is it doing to help?
My machinations are just like the prophecy itself. They will only reveal themselves at the fated time. It is just that beings like yourselves are unable to perceive them as of yet.
I think it was like Leon Trotsky and Romeo and Juliet. It was like when people lie, they add on a lot.
Allow me to be so bold as to ask another way. Would it be possible for you to tell us the parts of your plan that are not confidential? Such as your emergency response plan for the impending disaster?
An emergency response plan?
Oof, Queen to D8, that is a check. How is Furina gonna respond?
The emergency response plan is also strictly confidential.
Oh, well, that's comforting. Look, I don't... She has her hands on her hips. She's proud of that answer, bro. Just imagine, like, living in an earthquake zone, and when you ask your elected official what's the plan when the earthquake strikes, and they hit you with the, "Don't fucking question me." You know, it's not really... it's not really what you want to hear now, is it?
Then allow me to jog your memory. Miss Furina, What is the purpose of your oratrice mécanique d'analyse, Cardinal? And what do you plan to do with the massive amounts of indemnitium that has accumulated over the years?
The oratrice? It's just like it appears to be.
You lying bitch. This was the most furtive answer she gave in the entire exchange. When asked about other aspects of the prophecy, she seemed crestfallen and often put her head down. However, when asked about the oratrice, she quickly stammered over her words, started acting jittery, probably because she didn't want anyone to know the true nature of the oratrice, which is that the oratrice contains the remnants of the dead god Focalors, whilst Furina is nothing more than an actress taking on the performance of a lifetime, imitating how she thinks a god would conduct themselves. You know, originally, I thought the crying in the fountain was Focalors who was lonely in the machine, but now I'm convinced the crying is Furina who's genuinely tired of pretending to be someone she's not. With this framework in mind, she could be lonely because she can't let many people into her life lest they discover the truth, and she could be crying about the situation being interminable because she doesn't know how long she has to keep this up. So, what happened all those years ago? I think originally Focalors and Furina were both one entity. However, after learning about the prophecy and conducting her intel gathering, she split herself into two and created the oratrice using the gnosis and using all her divinity, leaving only her consciousness remaining in the oratrice and her body in Furina. Side note, this would not be the first time someone has died in this game and their consciousness is all that remained. Hell, this wouldn't even be the second time, it wouldn't even be the third time. Oh my god, this would be the fourth time. This will be the fourth time, bro. If they ain't get bored of it the first 3 times, what makes you think they gonna get bored of it the fourth, bro? Clearly these niggas think they got like lightning in a bottle or some shit. They think God himself must have told them to do this shit. This is the 4th time. This also, I think, helps to explain how Furina can both be taking the prophecy seriously and be so unprepared for it at the same time, and why her understanding of the oratrice seems so limited. Because while she knows more than most, let's not forget she was just as confused as everyone else as to why Childe was found guilty. She's completely cut off from the oratrice, and while she knows that Focalors is working on a way to counteract the prophecy, she's been left completely out of the loop and has no idea what's going on, which is why she gives the vague ass answers to Arlecchino, because while she knows that something is happening, she doesn't know the specifics. Furthermore, Furina is a drama queen who is currently putting on the performance of a lifetime playing the role of a god, despite the fact that she hates it. Her own official introduction even states, quote, "But when the curtains fall, a hollow feeling invariably starts to creep in. There are those who wonder whether there are moments in the dead of night when even a god like Furina feels the sharp pangs of loneliness. The reason Furina's version of a god seems so exaggerated is due to the fact that she's never met another god. After Furina was made by Focalors, the 7 had already stopped having meetings with one another, so instead of the majestic vibes we get from the other gods, we get what a person thinks a god to be. And yes, I know Nahida never met any of the other 7 either, but to be fair, she was barely a god before Rukkhadevata diddled herself from history and letting Nahida become, more assertive and confident in herself. Built on a complete lie, by the way. I'm a firm believer that we should have told her the truth, that she was Lesser Lord Kusanali, and there was another greater one. Actually, I believe it was Confucius who once said in The Art of War, you can't let people lie because, you just can't let people lie. It's not good. But still, even if this whole thing is true, I don't quite understand the purpose of it all. And what I mean by this is, the oratrice is making a mass amount of indemnitium, which is the energy that fuels Fontaine. But did Focalors envision this counteracting the prophecy? Like, what's the game plan for it all? I still don't understand how the oratrice is specifically going to counter the prophecy. Lastly, I want to say something before it gets misunderstood. Furina is not a human. She may not be a god, but she's certainly not a human. The oratrice has been around for hundreds of years, which means she has also been around for hundreds of years. So, she's something, she's something, but I mean, she's not a human, so she's something? I mean, I don't know, the bitch is something, bro.